Good morning. Now, do you remember as part of the referendum campaign that it was promised that if we left the EU we could wrest sovereignty from those bad people in Brussels and we could restore it to the UK Parliament? I think that has happened a little bit early, and I just wonder whether what's going on at the moment is what they had in mind, because that would be interesting. I just see the EU at the moment who has behaved in an entirely predictable way. I mean, I'm not saying the EU is perfect by any means, but goodness, they have been very, very consistent on the topic of Brexit. And I just feel that there's an awful lot of laughter going on in Brussels looking at the UK, which is the oldest parliamentary democracy in the world, and just going, you guys used to be the gold standard, and now what? Anyway, let's talk about what it all means. This is Lydia News. So, having threatened to do this last week, John Bercow, the Speaker of the House of Commons, has confirmed that the government, and indeed anyone, cannot bring back a motion to the House that has already been voted on without substantive changes. Basically saying that we've voted on this once, we made a decision, you can't just keep bringing it back and expect a different result. What this means is, had the government wished to hold another meaningful vote before the European Council on Thursday, it now can't do that. And indeed, if Theresa May comes back from Brussels with nothing else and nothing changes, then she can't hold a meaningful vote then either. Now, John Bercow, as the Speaker, is effectively the referee, and he is there to promote the will of the House, but also not to impede the will of the government. And he's meant to be impartial. I've said before that he has an enormous amount of power because he's the one that decides what the House debates, what amendments will go through. We've seen that already in the past week, that he has chosen amendments that have then been discussed and debated and has let others fall by the way. And some say that Bercow has a... Now, I don't hold with conspiracy theories because I just don't believe that anyone's that organised, frankly, and for it all to have fallen so perfectly into place, you need an awful lot of actors to all be on side and all of them to keep it secret, which is why conspiracy theories are usually nonsense. What I find most interesting is that the two groups that are lauding Bercow as a hero are those who are campaigning to remain in the EU and those who want to leave the EU with no deal. And I shall go into why those two groups are rejoicing in just a moment. But basically, May's going to go to Brussels on Thursday for the European Council, having not got the withdrawal agreement and principles of the future relationship that she'd agreed with them through the UK Parliament. And she's going to ask for an extension. She wants a shorter extension of about 3 months. It's possible that the EU will insist on a longer extension of a couple of years. Now, I find it ironic that if this is all about getting sovereignty back for the UK Parliament, that at this stage we are entirely in the hands of the EU and the decision of the other 27 members. So several pundits were saying over the weekend that Theresa May had rather cleverly routed the hardline Brexiteers of the European Research Group by basically getting them into a corner and saying it's either my deal or no Brexit, and no Brexit is what they fear over everything else. Now, Bercow's decision means that she can't just bring her vote back and try and ram it through, and they think it's unlikely that she'll get anything meaningful from the EU in the next week and a half, and so technically, legally, we are leaving the EU next Friday. Now, those who are campaigning to remain in the EU also rejoice for the same reason that Theresa May cannot force the same deal through Parliament. They feel that the EU is likely to grant us a longer extension to Article 50, in which case we'd participate in the European elections. There's time to kind of bring people round to the idea of staying in the EU. There could be a second referendum. There could at least be a very significant softening of the terms of Brexit away from Theresa May's fairly hardline Brexit to a softer version where we are more closely aligned with the single market. So you've basically got two opposite views, both rejoicing over the same thing. Now, at this stage, we do not know how the EU is going to react to our request to extend Article 50. There are a lot of opinions flying around, but we basically won't know until Thursday and the European Council. There are so many permutations as to what they might do. They might do nothing, although the EU really does not want no deal. They might extend for a short amount of time, they might extend for a long amount of time, or something completely different. They might, having said that they won't, they might still give Theresa May something that is a meaningful change for her to come back to Parliament with her vote. But the thing is that even though Bercow has made this ruling, politics always prevails. If Theresa May gets a majority for her deal in the House of Commons, then one of the House will prevail and they'll have another meaningful vote. So don't think that the meaningful vote is off the table entirely. And my prediction last week that Theresa May would get her deal through, I still stand by that. I think that that's still possible, even though Bercow has given everyone a good shove. It's totally possible. And if she does get an extension to Article 50, then there's a statutory instrument that they can put through Parliament. It only takes, I think, 3 hours in total in terms of debate to change the date on the Brexit legislation. So even though at the moment we are still leaving with no deal next Friday, I still think she'll get her deal through. But one thing that we've learned from Brexit, I feel, is that we can always expect the unexpected. I mean, Stephen Barclay, the Brexit secretary, arguing to extend Article 50 in the House of Commons and then immediately going and voting against it. I mean, no one could have predicted any of this. It's just so contorted and unpredictable. So, fascinating, but also rather hellish.